In Malone, we used to call it the March itch. Around March, everybody goes, I'm moving. I'm going to go to Florida, But I felt that way. I felt this grayness. I thought, I've got to do something, right? I've got to shake it up. There was this place called Montreal Improv, and they were starting classes. So I just got in my car, and I just drove to Montreal the next night. Then I just kept doing it. I would drive to Montreal once a week after school, drive all the way there, and then drive all the way home again. And I thought, I must like this.
From NCPR, welcome to Northwards. People, ideas, and conversations from and about Northern New York, Vermont, and beyond. I'm Mitch Teich.
Support for the Northwards podcast comes from the J.C. Steiniger and M.E. McDonald Charitable Fund at Adirondack Foundation in support of the Adirondack Foundation, building stronger Adirondack communities.
When I was 16 years old, I got to go to a show at Los Angeles' famous Improv Comedy Club. I remember a couple of things about that evening. While I was eating dinner before the show, I nearly choked to death on a piece of melted cheese from my pizza. It turned out that was not all that funny. But I also remember the show itself was funny, really funny, and I remember being amazed at how the troupe members on stage were able to call for ideas from the audience and work them all into their improvised sketches. I'm not being very funny describing it, but trust me, it was funny. I like to think of myself as quick-witted, but I'm not sure I have the gene for improv comedy. It's an impressive subset of comedy, and maybe the thing that's most amazing to me is that a group of people can go on stage for 3 or 4 nights in a row, and almost nothing about those 3 or 4 nights will be the same. Joe Conto has been doing improv for a good long while now, teaching it in Lake Placid and Montreal and performing as part of the Improv Theater of Montreal. In fact, his improv work has also crept into his day job. He's a professor at Paul Smith's College of Hospitality and Management. I invited him to stop by the studio recently to talk about improv as a whole and the show the Improv Stars of Montreal will put on at the Lake Placid Center for the Arts later this month. Thanks for coming by.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Mitch.
Well, so what is it that you love so much about improv?
That's a good question. It's not often that we get ourselves into a situation where we can depend on somebody working towards agreement with us. And that's really the basis of improv. Mitch, I'm a Libra. And so I'm a natural collaborator, right? And I always felt like that, except I'm also an argumentative person. So it's a tough combination. And improv has put me in a space with so many people who are there to build a team and to build something out of it that it does lean you towards that. I was never on a team my whole life. I grew up in Malone, and the response in our house was always, you could do whatever you wanted, but you had to find your own ride. That was always the thing, find your own ride. So you don't end up doing a lot of these sort of team-related activities. And it wasn't until I did improv that I went, oh, we're all supposed to be working. I never really understood it. And now I'm still not great at it, but I'm surrounded by people who are great at it. So I love that.
Well, what's interesting in that whole answer, you never once said being funny.
Oh, no, because it isn't about – look, I always say this and people go, but it is funny. It is about authenticity and commitment. If you want funny, then go to a stand-up show, right, and get zingers and that sort of stuff. I get it. There are some shows that are built about a setup and a joke. A setup and a joke. Sitcoms are often built that way. Improv, the joke sort of stops the show in a way. It's more about authenticity, right? People like to recognize something. Certainly a heightened version of that, but they like to see something they recognize in a scene. So – yeah, I do love being funny, by the way. I grew up in a very, very funny family. I like to laugh. But the funniest thing to me is when you see somebody be real and you can recognize it.
Talk about how you're able to tap into authenticity when you're teaching this, when you're actually doing it. It seems like a strange thing to teach somebody to be themselves.
Well, you're not necessarily yourself. I think that's important. One person once told me that your own charisma is your currency in improv. You must be likable. Even if you're the villain of a scene, you have to be the likable villain somehow. But I find that maybe you are a version of yourself or a version of something you see otherwise. I was just thinking this today on the way here, I observed a person just being themselves, and I thought, ooh, I want to use that in improv. And not the situation, but the type of person. Authenticity isn't my authenticity, but I'm trying to be an authentic person. And you start with, I always say, like if I do a show, sometimes people go, oh, that was a funny show. And I think to myself, well, I made all my faces, meaning I got 5 sort of base characters that I draw from an awful lot. And they are based on sort of archetypes of people I've known in my life. So it's not me, but it's my version of another authentic person.
So is this about doing character studies for you?
Sometimes, well, I guess, yeah, it is to a degree. But I don't want to make it seem hard and actory. You just see something and you become sort of that version of it in yourself, whatever it might be,
What drew you to it in the first place?
Yeah. There are points in your life where you look around and you go, God, everything feels kind of gray, right? And for me, I was
in North Country, so most of the time.
Yeah, and it was, it was what we used to, in Malone, we used to call it the March itch. Around March, everybody goes, I'm moving. I'm going to go to Florida, But I felt that way. I felt this grayness. And I thought, I've got to do something, right? I've got to shake it up. I was in my 40s before I started doing improv, so it wasn't like I was in a Mr. Bubble T-shirt and Converse sneakers and shorts in college. Not one of those improvisers. I was ostensibly a grown up, and so I Googled. What else do we do? I Googled improv classes, and I thought, where's the closest place they might have an improv class? And
you thought Ellenberg.
Yeah, it's not Ellenberg. Yeah. Nothing. At any rate, so I typed in Montreal eventually. I tried Burlington. I think I tried Saratoga Springs because I'm in Lake Placid and I'm equidistant from all those. Montreal improv classes, there was this place called Montreal Improv, and they were starting classes, a level 1 the very next night. This was on a Monday, and it was on a Tuesday. And, I went to Catholic school and everything. I believe in signs. And I went, I'm supposed to do this. So I just got in my car, and I just drove to Montreal the next night and showed up at this little rented room. They didn't have their own theater or anything at that time. And I just started doing it. And I did it. I thought, I'll do it 1 week. And then I said, I'll do another week and another week. And then before you know it, I had done a whole level of classes. And then I just kept doing it. I would drive to Montreal once a week after school, drive all the way there, and then drive all the way home again. And I thought, I must like this, And I almost kept it as a secret at first because I was almost embarrassed that I was putting so much effort into, nonsense. But here we are.
Well, and presumably it scratched the itch that needed to be scratched.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And look, one itch is just to be creative. One itch is to be looked at, right? I always have to be looked at, right? But it also scratched that itch of meeting your tribe. I don't know another way to put it, right? A group of people that you're like, oh, they're weird like I'm weird, whatever it might be, yeah? And when you meet those people, you got it knocked as far as I'm concerned, yeah.
So where, not literally where did it start for you, but when you walk into an improv class, because you teach these now, people presumably walk in with kind of a blank slate. Where do you start with them?
I love a blank slate because often people will come in because they've been told you're really funny. So they come in with the idea of like, wait till they get a load of me, right? Or people come in who are trained actors. And they are looking for a different experience often. So I'm making it sound far more pretentious than it is. We must strip away all of that. But really, you've got to get down to the idea of just say something. Don't worry about being funny. Do not worry about being interesting. Just say something and then have that person listen to you or you listen to them and then simply respond. Agree that what they say is true. If somebody says, I want to get a divorce, you don't have to say yes to the divorce, but you do have to agree that you and that person are in some type of relationship where a divorce is a possibility. There's this old story, Joan Rivers, the comedian, did improv and was not very good at it because she was always going for the joke. Like the story goes that somebody said to her, I want a divorce. And she said, I've never seen you before in my life, right? That was about Joan Rivers. And she got a laugh, right? But then the scene dies because you're stuck there being nuts. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was married to you. So really the basis simply is agree with that this is the truth, that the base reality is true, and then add to it until something interesting happens. Don't worry about it. You don't have to make a problem. You don't have to be ridiculous. Something interesting will happen. We focus on that, and then we just heighten it a little bit, and that becomes the comedic premise.
Not to add too much weight to this, but these are skills that you don't just that don't just apply to while you're on stage.
Oh, I would very much agree. First of all, it's not skills we're typically taught. We're not taught to be authentic, right? We're not taught to say yes. Think about how much you are taught to say no, to deny, right? Everything, to sort of push back and then dig in your heels. It's just part of humanity. And here we are saying, no, say yes to that. Say yes to that, all those sorts of things. So it does – I'm going to make it sound like I'm a great person. I'm not. I try very hard, I think. But it does make you say yes more to possibility. And your first thought isn't, oh, how can this not work? It is, all right, let's build on this and build on this, knowing that you might build it to something that just sort of floats away. But also know in improv there's this thing called callback, where throughout a set you might refer back to something from the beginning of the set. It always gets a laugh. It's a little back pocket trick. But I find myself doing it in meetings and things like that as well, professionally, that I will say yes to something that is getting some resistance early in a meeting. But then by the end of the meeting, there is a way to bring it back and simply say, oh, you know what? This kind of sounds like where we started here. It's a comedic callback, I guess, but I've been able to use it professionally as well. It does make you a more positive person, when I say agreeable person, I don't mean pleasant. I don't know that I'm particularly pleasant to be around. But
you're fine in the studio.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Well, this is the act, right? But agreeable meaning, got it. I'm not going to knock everything down immediately. Yeah, it does change. You also get I talk too much. It also gives you what I call a front brain and a back brain. You can be doing whatever you're doing, but you have this other brain going all the time that is almost above you, helping you out.
I was wondering if there's a certain part of you that has to be present while at the same time another part of you who's thinking down the road about where I'm going to be when whatever we're doing together reaches that point.
Yes. However, at the same time, you've got to accept the fact that all these little ideas that you have, these little side trails that you're building in your head might go up in a puff of smoke if the other person says anything different. At any point, it can go in a different direction. So you have to have a multitude of possibilities, knowing that you can't get married to any one of them, because then you are pushing the story or the scene in a direction that we have to remember our partner doesn't know what we're thinking, right? They don't know. They're only going to react as they're going to react. So you build from there. I often say that I bring a brick, you bring a brick, I bring a brick, you bring a brick, and then we have this amazing wall by the end of it. But if I try to bring all the bricks, it's going to be lopsided.
Well, and so is the secret to having a good improv troupe getting to know where your partners are going to put their bricks?
That's certainly part of it. However, I find that if you do too much improv with the same people, it's great because there's this thing called, a hive mind or group mind that occurs that is really beneficial. But you start doing the same scene again and again and again, right? It just happens to be, now we're in a monastery and now we're in a laundromat and now we're in a whatever. So you make yourself improvise with people that you don't know very well. That's why troupes are a great base, but that can't or shouldn't, I guess, be your only performance idea is with those folks. In fact, there are improv shows that are based on the idea that you don't know who you're going to improvise with, and you may be improvising with complete strangers, especially if you go to festivals for the very first time on stage. that night. There's a show that we sometimes do in Montreal where the lights come up and you have a complete stranger with you on stage. And here we go. We're going to do a scene. Very different than me and, my pal, whatever, Dale, or somebody who I've done improv with for years. We have a shorthand between us.
Is it terrifying?
That's interesting. Well, yes and no.
At least to have a stranger on stage with you that you've never improved with?
Yeah. It's exciting. And terror is exciting, right? Why else would we do half the things we do? But again, if you know that this person is an improviser, you have a trust that they're with you. They are with you. In fact, we do this format. I'm doing it at the end of November in Montreal, where the other person is a trained actor, and they have learned their scene, their lines from their scene. I'm an improviser. I've never seen anything before. So regardless of what I say, they're following script. And that is terrifying because that person isn't we're not building anything together. I'm building something completely alone over here while this person has scripted material. It's called 50-50. It is amazing.
It sounds hilarious.
Yeah. Scary, but that is truly scary. Otherwise, you're up there with a friend, right? Even if they're a stranger, we got this knocked.
Do I have this right? Do you take some of what you do in the improv world and apply it to your academic world when you're working with students?
The short answer is yes. I'm often doing character, you know what I mean, or character stuff when I'm trying to explain something. I'll see that happening just naturally. It has given me the ability to, in a class, if there is something that seems to be gaining interest, I'm perfectly happy to take a, lack of a better term, like a side quest, right, to explore this part of the subject matter, because the class seems to be having an interest, right? I'm getting an interest level from them. I'll certainly spend a little more time than I anticipated on that, and then figure out a way to get back on track, as opposed to, well, no, it's 10:37. Well, we've got to be here in the PowerPoint, right? It's taken that away from me as well, and I make them sort of interact a little more than a typical teacher, and I think that keeps people on their toes a little bit.
Well, and it occurs to me that college students, when they get to college, are used to kind of a very scripted academic career. Aside from maybe a handful of teachers they've had in high school, things are very regimented when you go to high school, and college to a large degree is one big improvisational experience.
I would agree with that, and because I'm teaching freshmen this term, and I don't typically, and to see them sort of have to come out of that high school experience, which I don't know, I don't teach high school, but certainly I think just to keep a lid on things, right, it has to be more structured than I'm able to do in college, and I can see for many of them, it feels like a bit of relief that they can add their 2 cents freely. For other people, they would just prefer to be ignored for a while, right? Let me just sit here and I'll take my notes and that sort of thing. So some people really enjoy it, and other people have to be coaxed into it. But I do have the ability to, or the privilege to get students typically in their first, second, third, and fourth years, and to see somebody in a third or fourth year class where it's much more project-based and that sort of thing, to see them move from that regimented way to something that is a little more freewheeling is exciting. And I teach an improv class at Paul Smith's now,
really,
as well. It's a 3-credit course because we don't study just doing improv. We study all the tenets of improv and that sort of thing. And I'm hoping that look, I'm trying to grow a community here, Mitch, and I'm hoping to do that on campus as well as in Lake Placid and through the North Country.
So I was going to ask about that. Thinking back to the days where you had to drive to Montreal, at the drop of a hat to learn this, there are now more opportunities, in part thanks to you, to learn this here in the North Country.
Yeah, I work with Lake Placid Center for the Arts in Lake Placid, and I teach improv there. I guess I teach it at 3 levels, though I'm only one person, right? All 3 levels are never running at any given time, but I have sort of an intermediate/advanced level going right now, and then I have a troupe level going right now. In January, I'm hoping to have a a beginner's class, and then maybe one of the other classes going. Any two of those three are going at any given time, but I do that through Lake Placid Center for the Arts, and then I also teach on campus. In the spring, I teach a course, and I'm I don't know. I don't mean to be plugging, but I'm also available.
Did you bring a clip?
Yeah. I wish. At any rate, I'm also available for like I've done some corporate, because I'm in Lake Placid, some corporate things, and I've done people who want to figure out what to do at a family reunion, that sort of stuff. I'll do workshops and that sort of thing.
Well, and so you teach in the hospitality program at Paul Smith's.
That's right.
And
That's my background.
Well, and as I was thinking about this, there is a lot in the hospitality world that is basically improv, right?
Oh, I would definitely agree with that. I waited tables for a long time. And here's the deal. It's all show business, right? I'm not surprised that I was attracted to the idea of being a teacher, because academia is showbiz, right? Hospitality is showbiz. Radio is showbiz. It's tough to have something that's not showbiz to a degree. I had an uncle. My Uncle Bob owned he managed a thrill car show called the Hell Drivers. They used to come to the county fair, and that sort of thing. And I remember, I'll tell you what, I was so impressed by that. And I grew up on the Carol Burnett show. And I thought, I'd give my left arm to be there in front of people. And I didn't care whether it was on stage at a thrill car show, right, with the hoop of fire, or whether it was on CBS on Saturday nights. I would take any of it. So the idea that I can put on a show and people will come in and pay their whatever dollars to see me, it's a real treat.
Well, and so we're not doing this just as a plug, but give us a little bit of a preview of the show that you're actually putting on at the Lake Placid Center.
It just so
for the Arts.
happens. and like you said, that's not really why I'm here. I wanted to talk to you in general. But I'm bringing 15 different improvisers down from Montreal.
They are speaking English, however.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're all Anglophiles, yeah. My French is better than a couple of them, actually, and my French is border French.
Right, people, exactly.
All the border people will know what I mean. But at any rate, so October 26th, 8 p.m. at LPCA, bring them down, and we're doing 3 different sets of different formats of improvisational comedy. These are great friends of mine, first of all, but they're also great improvisers. And what a great theater we'll be performing in as well. Understand that often when you're doing improv, you're anywhere, in the back room of an Italian restaurant downtown Montreal sometimes, or in a bar or whatever. So when we get LPCA, right, with comfortable seats and great lighting and sound and the whole thing, we're pretty excited to be there.
A green room, no less.
Oh, a green room, yeah. Multiple dressing rooms. We take full advantage. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so they're coming down on October 26th. If people want to get tickets, they can go to lakeplacidarts.org and look under performances there, and they can buy some tickets.
Well, and so bring this all home for us. You said sometimes it is terrifying, but is it exhilarating? What do you feel when you walk off the stage at the end of a night of improv?
Oh yeah, there's a buzz that comes with it, right? Whether it's a good show or a bad show, because I've done plenty of both. Even if you've done a bad show, you look at the other people, because again, you're not terrified in the way that you would be, I think, if you were a stand-up. Because you're always there with friends. You're able to share the excitement of it, but you're also there to share the pain of it as well. And after, you sort of look around and be like, oh, we made something, right? Something happened. And it's exciting in a different way than being an observer.
And the amazing thing to me is that it never happens the same way twice.
It truly doesn't. Sometimes it happens so great that people assume, oh, you must have made that up before. But improv is magic in that sense that sometimes it's just there and you can hit just the right button at the right moment and you've got a really great outcome or result or, comic premise or something that comes up.
Joe Conto, thanks.
My pleasure. I really appreciate being here. Thank you.
Joe Conto is a professor of hospitality and management at Paul Smith's College and a teacher of improv comedy classes at the Lake Placid Center for the Arts and the Montreal Improv Theater. He and the rest of the improv stars of Montreal will do a show at LPCA on Saturday, October 26th. You can find a link to more about it at ncpr.org/northwards. Producer Ethan Shanty does a fair amount of improvisation himself, but in the next few seconds, I believe he will be reading from a list of closing credits.
Northwards is an NCPR podcast production. The show is written, edited, and produced by Mitch Tyke with digital production supervision by me, Ethan Shanty. Caitlin Kelly handles our social media, Bill Hanel is our digital director, and Doyle Dean is our production manager. Music is by the Wickmore Jazz Trio of Plattsburgh. To support this show and find more podcasts, visit ncpr.org. This is NCPR, North Country Public Radio.